for me to get this done, but let's see what I can do to give you a pep talk. So let's see. First thing I wanted to point out, looking at your blog, you really are a fine writer. Your essay one was really, really nicely done. Nice level of detail, important thing to say, really well put together, good control of all that sentence type stuff. So the writing itself shouldn't be a problem. I know people get stuck up on particular assignments or whatever, and maybe that seems like what's happening. So the main difference between essay 1 and essay 2 is that in essay 2 you're responding to reading, so that introduction of reading may have something to do with the problems you're having. But I wanted to show you, well, a couple things. One, there is this video down here that I did that talks about the assignment in some detail. If you haven't seen that, I encourage you to see that, watch that. It's about 15 minutes. But to, more generally, let me show you one thing that let's see if I can find it, that I was talking about with my face-to-face students, and that is, let's see, let's get this essay 5. Let's look at this environment and nature one. Okay, so you've got an essay, you're going to do a summary and response. First thing is to start annotating it, marking the important points in the essay in terms of a summary, and then also marking places where you think you might respond. So what are the thoughts that you have as you're reading through the essay? What does it remind you of? Things you've read, your own experience? What are the things that you find yourself strongly agreeing or disagreeing with, or questioning, or unclear of? Any of those things are possible material that you can use for your response. The summary, I would say, is by far the harder of the two, though. So what you're looking for, you want to look to try to figure out what the main idea of the piece is, and then what evidence that person uses to support that main idea, and then how much do they consider what other people might think about that idea, and how do they answer that back? So what's the counter argument or an alternative point of view? So as I'm reading through this essay, this was a good one because it has a pretty clear breakdown, I think. What I'm looking for, if there's section heads, that will help give you pieces to the article, and you can look at, well, what is each section, what's the main point it makes, and what is it accomplishing? In this one, and again, you can read through the article at your, when you have time. I'm just going to kind of skim through it. But so he's talking about this nature deficit disorder, the idea that kids are removed from nature. They don't experience the natural world. And why is this happening? And why is it a bad thing? So if you look through the first few paragraphs, it's kind of an introduction to the idea of nature deficit disorder. He talks about this guy, Richard Louv, I don't know how you say his name, and this book he wrote, he came up with this concept of nature deficit disorder. He came up with the term. And he's given the writer here is giving some personal connection and talking about an interview he had with Louv. And now when it gets down here, so I would say that first section is an introduction to the idea of nature deficit disorder. So, and the little bit about the guy's personal history. That's not really the meat of the essay. It's an introduction. It gets the reader engaged, it sets the scene, but it's not really the central ideas of the essay. When you get down here, Something very profound has happened in children's relationship to nature. So now he starts talking about they live in the city, so that and they're the distractions of TV. Uh, Average 8 to 18-year-old now spends more than 53 hours using entertainment media that is on screen. So video games. Okay, now he gets into the parents' fear. There are other factors, time pressure. So I look at that section of 4, 5, 6 paragraphs and think, well, what is that? That's a series of reasons why, reasons that account for this nature deficit disorder. Children shouldn't be let out. So here we continue. Children shouldn't be let outside unsupervised. Okay, but now and talks about more kids falling out of bed than falling out of trees. Okay, at this point, after this obesity, the end of this paragraph, what he's starting to do is shift. So he's going from what are the causes to what are the effects. Obesity is just the most visible one. There's an increasing body of research showing time spent has a significant impact on more than physical well-being, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, learning ability. Okay, so this is what happens as a result of this. There's a couple paragraphs of that. And here, it's not, though, exclusively bad news. So here, we're making a shift from the negative effects to the positive things that have been done. And there's a foundation, there's a teacher's network. Okay, so as I work through this essay, I'm looking for these chunks. I see we've got an introduction, we've got causes, we've got effects, and we've got sort of the initiatives that have sprung up to combat this. That gives me, see here, this is the end of the article here. This is stuff that I should have cut out, and I didn't. That gives us 4 sections. I'm going to use those as paragraphs in my summary. So that can be really helpful if you can identify in the article what's the main point the author's making, and what are the pieces. Section heads are helpful with that, but you also are going to look for transitions. It's not, though, exclusively bad news, those kind of things that indicate shifts from one subtopic to another. So the one you've got, the family one, I was talking with one of my face-to-face students. I was Zooming with her the other day, and it is a little complicated in terms of these different perspectives, but you want to think in terms of what's the main thing the author's trying to say, what is she responding to, what kind of evidence does she have a definitive point, what are the things, the perspectives that other people say, and then what does she say. And if you can identify these chunks of information, that will be really helpful in structuring the summary. The response section is easier, I think. You're just going to think in terms of, how did you take the article? What do you think about the involvement of parents in kids' play? If you're a parent yourself, that will make it, I can't remember if you mentioned anything like that in your first essay. That will give you some material to draw from. But as I say, I'd concentrate on the summary first and try just to take it one step at a time, mark up the essay. I do a step of note taking, so I'd look at the essay and sort of on a separate sheet of paper or on a separate, I would do this on paper myself, jot down what the most important things are. If you reduce the annotations to like a single sheet of paper, then you can see what you've got to work with, and it's easier to think in terms of how to group things together. So this grouping chunks of information may come as you're reading through the article, but it may take, taking notes and kind of stepping back and seeing, well, what pieces, is there some reasons here or evidence or what things kind of go together. Anyway, I hope that's of some help. I would concentrate on, as I say, just get the summary done first. That you do need to find an additional source that's going to be either used in your introduction or in your response, but I go into more detail about that in that other video. So as I say, have a look at that one if you haven't. Get something down on paper. Even if it's just, doesn't have to be a formal outline, a bullet point list where you're getting some groups, grouping things into what's going to turn into paragraphs. If you want to try to get something down and then talk about it, I'd be happy to do that through Zoom. But it is one of the more complicated articles in terms of the different kind of perspectives, and she doesn't necessarily take she's not black or white. So there's a quote somewhere in there about that that it's a complicated issue and different people have different perspectives. Anyway, see what you can do. Let me know. I'm gonna shut this off before I just stop me from rambling. But anyway, good luck. I think this is just a glitch, I hope, and that you'll be able to move on from here. Okay, I'll hope to hear from you soon.